No one expected life to return to this place. Not here where the sand eats everything, where the wind forgets mercy, and where rain hasn't touched the ground in years. Yet today in the heart of the Sahel, something impossible stands tall. 50,000 hectares of bananas. Green, dense, alive. Ibrahim Traore calls it the quiet revolution. Critics call it a myth. Scientists call it a violation of biology. But farmers standing on the dunes say only one word: miracle. Because bananas aren't just crops. They demand water, shade, and rich soil, none of which exist here. And yet rows of bright yellow fruit stretch farther than the horizon, fed not by rivers, but by something no one fully understands. State media claims it's agriculture. Foreign analysts insist it's energy. And a leaked report calls it Gaia Root Phase 1. So the question is no longer how Traore grew bananas in the desert, it's why. And what exactly is he building beneath the sand? It began quietly, not with a speech, not with a parade, but with a single document uploaded to the Ministry of Agro-Sovereignty at 2:14 a.m. Its title was simple: Banana Belt Initiative, Phase 1 completed. Most people ignored it until sunrise. State TV showed the first aerial footage, miles, no entire continents of green, slicing across a dead desert like a river made of leaves. Banana trees tall and perfect standing in formation across 50,000 hectares of land that had been nothing but dust a year earlier. The anchor kept repeating the same line: Sahel has awakened. June 2031. Traore visited the site himself, walking through rows of banana plants that should not exist. Next to him were engineers, soldiers, farmers, and a group of scientists holding tablets. Their screens flashed with readings no one could explain: stable humidity, low evaporation, nutrient-rich soil. All in a place where rainfall averaged less than 6 inches per year. Reveal number one came during that visit. Traore announced that the plantations weren't irrigated by pipelines, wells, or groundwater extraction. Instead, the project used solar fog net, millions of carbon lattice fibers stretched across the dunes, capturing moisture from night air and channeling it into underground reservoirs. In 48 hours, the clip went viral. The world had never seen fog nets on this scale, a water system that didn't drain rivers, didn't drill wells, didn't steal from anyone. It created its own water. Within days, every major global outlet reacted. CNN Bananas, powered by Ibrahim Traore, breaks ecology again. Reuters, Africa's most ambitious desert farm, and Al Jazeera's headline summed up the confusion perfectly. Bananas without water, what is Burkina Faso hiding? Inside Burkina Faso, reactions were mixed. Some cheered, some doubted. Some feared the desert was being forced into something unnatural. Farmers from Garom claimed the soil felt soft again, like the old days before the long droughts. Children ran through the green corridors, touching leaves for the first time in their lives. And traders whispered that fresh bananas had reached Ouagadougou's markets, sweet, large, unnervingly perfect. But there was one detail the government didn't mention. FogNet alone couldn't explain the speed of growth, not this fast, not this consistent. Satellite images showed something strange: heat patterns beneath the plantations, forming geometric clusters, nodes, circuits, pathways. Something artificial, something engineered. That's when a leaked internal memo surfaced. It described the program not as agriculture, but as Gaia Root Phase, a bioenergy experiment designed to test whether banana roots could store and distribute microcurrents from natural soil electricity. If true, Traore wasn't just growing bananas, he was growing a network. By the end of the first month, exports of Sahel bananas rose so sharply that European fruit distributors accused Burkina Faso of market disruption. Agricultural firms demanded an investigation. Environmental NGOs expressed outrage, claiming the desert was being manipulated beyond recognition. But the people of Burkina Faso didn't care about the politics. They cared about the green, the shade, the smell of fruit ripening in a place where nothing had ripened in decades. Yet amid this new hope, one quiet question began to circulate among scientists, economists, and world leaders alike. If bananas are growing this fast, what else is growing underneath them? Behind every strange decision in Traore's Burkina Faso, there's always a deeper layer. And with bananas, that layer ran beneath the soil. The world assumed Traore planted bananas for food security, a simple crop, Fast-growing, high-yield, logical enough, but they were wrong, completely wrong. According to classified documents leaked from the Ministry of Biosovereignty, the real name of the project was never Banana Belt. Its official title was Gaia Root, Bioelectric Phase 1. And the bananas weren't chosen for their fruit, they were chosen for their roots. Bananas have one of the most electrically active root systems in the plant kingdom. Their roots generate microcurrents, tiny pulses of bioelectricity as they exchange nutrients with soil bacteria. Normally, these currents are too weak to matter, insignificant, invisible, but Traore's scientists enhanced them. Reveal number 2 came from a technical paper circulated among West African research labs. The banana strains in the Sahel are genetically modified to amplify bioelectric signals by 50-70x. Not enough to power a city, but enough to create a living, conductive network under 50,000 hectares of sand. In other words, Traore wasn't planting crops, he was planting infrastructure. The leaked memo described the system as a root-based microgrid. Each plantation had its own underground biocapacitors, reservoirs of electrically charged soil, created through the interaction of fog-net moisture mineral layers and modified root clusters. When combined, the plantations formed a massive biological circuit, a silent grid in the desert pulsing with tiny but coordinated currents. One line in the memo stood out. The Banana Belt is not a farm, it is a biological battery. Scientists overseas refused to believe it. European agricultural agencies dismissed the idea as Afro-futurist nonsense. U.S. analysts called it biopolitical fiction. But then the first measurements leaked. Electromagnetic sensors placed near the plantations recorded faint but consistent current flow organized in repeating intervals, a timer, a rhythm, a grid. And here's where the story deepens. Because the grid didn't start on its own, it responded to what no one knew. In the internal correspondence, Traore's chief engineer wrote, "The system stabilizes only when humidity and heat align perfectly. When that happens, the roots sink." Sink, a biological term rarely used for plants. The engineer continued, "It behaves less like a farm, more like a neural network. A neural network made of roots, powered by moisture, activated by heat." Then came the data from atmospheric sensors. Every time the grid fired, condensation increased by 1–2% in the area. Cloud formation grew denser. Rainfall probability spiked. The ecosystem was somehow talking to the sky. This wasn't agriculture. It was climate engineering through biology. Inside Burkina Faso, the government denied nothing but explained even less. Traore only said, "If the world can build machines to change nature, why can't Africa grow its own?" His silence was louder than any confirmation. Meanwhile, world powers reacted sharply. France demanded an international inquiry claiming the project interfered with regional climate patterns. The EU drafted sanctions targeting Burkina Faso's agricultural tech imports. India, however, praised the innovation, hinting at a potential partnership. China sent scientists to observe. Global speculation rose. Was Traore building a sustainable food system, a defensive climate network, a new kind of energy, or all three at once? Yet the people living in the Banana Belt cared little for geopolitics. They cared about the cool morning mists where there used to be scorching heat. They cared about soil that suddenly felt live again. They cared about bananas growing faster than anyone had seen before. Still, something didn't add up, because the plantations were expanding faster than FogNet alone could support. Something else was happening underground, something no one had fully explained. And then a second leak revealed the truth. Gaia Root Phase 2 had already begun. The world tried to make sense of the impossible. Bananas growing in perfect rows was one thing, but a biological microgrid humming beneath the sand, that was something else entirely. As the leaked documents spread, reactions exploded across Africa. In Burkina Faso, young people celebrated. They called the plantations the yellow veins arteries of life running through the desert. To them, Traore wasn't just a president. He was the man who made the Sahara blink. On national radio, callers said the same line over and over. "If this is madness, may it spread." But outside the city's reactions were more complicated. Older villagers feared the change. The desert to them was not empty, it was alive, ancient, and temperamental. And now humans were feeding it with roots and electricity. In the small settlement of Tin Efelo, farmer Umar Zongo, age 62, became the first to witness something truly strange. He walked out before dawn to check his goats, and saw the soil glowing a faint yellow shimmer beneath the plants pulsing in waves. Not bright, not threatening, just awake. He told reporters, it was breathing. The ground was breathing like an animal. His neighbors didn't believe him, not until they saw it themselves. Under certain humidity, the soil emitted low-frequency vibrations, almost like a weak engine beneath the earth. It came every 20 seconds, perfectly timed, perfectly even. Scientists rushed to investigate but were blocked from entering by military security. The plantations were now considered restricted ecological zones. Meanwhile, footage leaked from a soldier's phone showed banana trees tilting slightly toward each other during high humidity, as if adjusting their alignment. Botanists called it collective phototropism. Locals called it listening. In Europe, panic began. France claimed the bioelectric fields might interfere with atmospheric jets. Germany called the project a rogue experiment. The European Parliament demanded immediate suspension of the Banana Belt Initiative and threatened agricultural sanctions. Across the Atlantic, U.S. analysts went further, labeling the project geo-bio-infrastructure with unknown military potential. They speculated the root network could be used to interfere with communication signals, or worse, to create controlled microclimates for strategic advantage. But in Africa, the narrative was very different. Ethiopia sent a delegation. Ghana offered to replicate the FogNet system. Mali asked for training to create its own banana belt. Kenya called it the first African-controlled climate tool. The continent was dividing not between allies and enemies, but between those who feared the future and those ready to grow it. Reveal number 3 came from an independent climate group in Senegal. They released satellite scans showing that whenever the bioelectric grid pulsed, humidity levels rose not just in Burkina Faso, but in parts of Niger and Mali. A regional effect, a spreading effect. That discovery changed everything, because it meant the banana belt wasn't local, it was continental. And as tensions rose, the sky delivered its own verdict. In late August, a storm formed over the Sahel, the first in a decade. Not a dust storm, a rainstorm. Thunderwater clouds thick as smoke. Villagers danced in the streets as rain soaked their fields for 7 hours straight. Scientists scanned the data and stared in disbelief. Every time the storm weakened, the banana grid pulsed. Every time the grid pulsed, the storm strengthened. It wasn't natural, it wasn't accidental, it was synced. An atmospheric scientist in Ghana summarized it perfectly. It's like the desert and the plants are speaking the same language, but no one knew what they were saying. And beneath the celebration, beneath the geopolitics, beneath the storm itself, one question began to echo louder and louder in every newsroom, every laboratory, every ministry. What happens if Traore turns the grid on fully? The leaks always arrive at night. This one was no different. At 2:09 a.m., an unknown account uploaded a 72-page PDF to a private scientific forum in Cape Town. Its title stamped in red Gaia root, Phase 2, Subterranean Energy Conduction. Within minutes, researchers were downloading it. Within hours, the world knew. The report claimed something extraordinary, almost unbelievable. The banana plantations weren't just storing microcurrents, they were preparing to transmit them. Every plantation contained thousands of underground junction clusters, mineral-infused soil pockets, strengthened with carbon mesh, connected through enhanced banana roots, acting as flexible conduits. The goal: to create a living power grid under the sand, a grid that repaired itself, expanded on its own, and adapted to climate conditions without human control. But the most shocking part wasn't the grid, it was the destination. A map at the end of the document showed a single convergence point, a sharpened, glowing node beneath the capital, Ouagadougou. A researcher commented anonymously, "If this is real, Traore is building the world's first biological capacitor, a power plant made of roots, fed by moisture, sustained by the desert, growing stronger every time FogNet harvested water." The implications terrified global leaders. If the grid reached Phase 2 activation, the entire Sahel could become an energy reservoir, one that no foreign nation could control, mine, or sanction. But there was one more revelation. A line circled in red in the leak read, Phase 2 output potential estimated 0.4, 1.2 megawatts per 10 hectares. That meant the full 50,000 hectare grid could produce enough power to run every village in northern Burkina Faso, every fog processor, every biosovereignty lab, and possibly our systems not yet disclosed. As scientists argued over feasibility, new footage surfaced filmed by a soldier inside Zone Delta. It showed a banana field at twilight, the soil beneath it glowing in waves of soft yellow. Then, without warning, a bright pulse shot outward along the rows, traveling across the horizon faster than wind. The soldier whispered in fear. "It's alive! The ground is alive!" The clip ended abruptly. International news broke in seconds. Evidence of energy transmission detected beneath Banana Belt. Burkina Faso may have created self-expanding power grid. Is Traore engineering a living superstructure? World capitals panicked. Paris demanded an emergency investigation. Brussels called it biological militarization. Washington described it as an unprecedented geostrategic threat. But inside Burkina Faso, the government issued only one statement. Africa will no longer borrow power. We will grow it. And then came the scariest part. Satellite scans showed the grid wasn't expanding randomly. It was expanding toward the convergence point beneath the capital, faster every day. No one knew what would happen when the living grid reached the heart of the city. Not the scientists, not the generals, not even the people who built it. When the world finally understood what Gaia Route Phase 2 might become, panic gave way to accusation. Papers called it biological brinkmanship. Think tanks labeled Burkina Faso the first bioenergy rogue state. Politicians demanded sanctions, inspections, interventions. But for once, Traore didn't answer with silence. He answered with results. Reveal number 4 came from the Sahel Geophysical Laboratory, a research group from Mali granted rare access to Zone Alpha. Their findings shocked everyone. The underground grid wasn't theoretical. It was real and active. They measured microcurrents flowing through the soil at 0.7 to 1.1 megawatts cumulatively across the test area. More incredibly, the grid's conductivity increased after rainfall, just as predicted. The banana roots were behaving like organic cables, pulling, storing, and transferring energy between nodes. One scientist wrote, "We are witnessing the birth of the first living power infrastructure. Not built, grown." The global response was immediate. France called it eco-nationalism weaponized. The EU accused Traore of using biology to evade energy sanctions. The US warned that Burkina Faso was creating a decentralized energy bunker that could empower anti-Western alliances. On live television, a US senator thundered, "A growing power grid cannot be sanctioned. It cannot be bombed. It cannot be seized. That is the danger." But Africa saw something else, something entirely different. Across Ghana, Kenya, Ethiopia, Nigeria, young scientists began circulating the phrase energy without extraction, power without pollution, infrastructure that heals. And in Ouagadougou, Traore appeared on national TV unbothered, composed. Behind him, banana trees swayed under a gray sky, heavy with unexpected rain. He began calmly. "They fear what we grow because they cannot mine it." Then he leaned forward. "For a century, Africa's resources powered other continents. Today, our plants power themselves, and that is what terrifies them." Critics worldwide erupted. Environmental groups accused Traore of tampering with natural systems. European energy lobbies claimed he was destabilizing global markets. Some even demanded the banana belt be dismantled. But Traore's government responded with a simple statement. "We tried the old ways for generations. They gave us drought. We try a new way and the desert answers. Why stop?" Meanwhile, the grid kept growing. Sensors embedded across 50,000 hectares showed something astonishing. When humidity rose, the banana roots accelerated their conductivity. When wind picked up, the fognet system harvested more moisture, powering the roots further. When the soil cooled, the roots slowed, self-regulating, self-balancing. It wasn't a power grid. It was a living organism wearing the shape of one. Then came the French counter-report, a harsh critique, calling the system unstable, untested, and potentially catastrophic. They argued that an uncontrolled bioelectric network could disrupt atmospheric patterns. A French analyst declared, "If Traore activates Phase 3, the Sahel could experience climate chaos." But Burkina Faso hit back with data. They released months of climate scans showing a 12% increase in regional humidity, reduced reduced surface temperature, improved soil regeneration, consistent rainfall in test zones, and the biggest surprise, even energy production stabilized. A young Burkinabe engineer, Fatimata Sawadogo, appeared in front of cameras holding a handheld power meter beside a banana root. As the reading climbed, she said, "This isn't chaos. This is Africa finally harnessing the biology that colonization ignored." Her clip went viral. Millions of Africans saw it as a declaration of independence. But in the West, outrage only grew. Talk shows claimed that if Burkina Faso controlled biological electricity, it could shut down regional power grids. Others accused Traore of preparing a stealth energy weapon. One European commentator shouted, "What he is doing is not farming. It is nation-building with biology." But perhaps the most symbolic moment came during a UN hearing when a French diplomat asked the African delegation, "Do you even understand the risks of this experiment?" A silence followed. Then the Ghanaian delegate replied, "Do you understand the risks of stopping it?" The room erupted. And as the world argued, something else happened, something no one expected. The convergence point beneath Ouagadougou lit up for the first time. A pulse radiated outward through the entire banana belt, synchronized, precise, powerful. It wasn't random. It wasn't accidental. It was activation. For weeks, the world speculated about the convergence point or Ouagadougou. Was it a control center, a capacitor, a biological reactor? But the truth came from someone who had no title, no rank, no political power, only a laptop, a soil probe, Vamat Niemtintuyed, Joyrangjat Konkosudakwano. Her name was Awa Diabate. She grew up in a village where the desert ate everything, as she always said. Her father died in the drought of 2024. Her mother survived by walking 19 miles each week just to find water. Awa had only one goal when she joined the program. If the land can hear us, let's speak to it. But she never imagined it would speak back. One morning at 4:51 a.m., her tablet lit up with something impossible. The underground bioelectric grid had shifted not in strength, but in pattern. Instead of scattered pulses, the currents now moved in perfect synchronization across all 50,000 hectares. Awa froze. Plants don't sync themselves like that. Not across that distance. Not with that precision. She triple-checked the data, reran the scan, switched sensors. Same result. A single unified pulse sweeping through the entire banana belt like a breath. Reveal number 5 came from the waveform itself. When she slowed it down, filtered the noise, and plotted the intervals, the pulse formed a clear rhythm. 5 beats, 2-second rest. 5 beats, 2-second rest. Awa whispered to herself, This is not random." She grabbed a soil probe, ran outside, and plunged it into the ground. The pulse hit immediately, soft, warm, vibrating through the sand, like a heartbeat trapped beneath the earth. Then she realized something that made her drop the probe in shock. The pulse wasn't traveling through the roots. It was traveling from the convergence point outward, radiating, repeating, growing. The grid wasn't a network anymore. It was a single organism, a living superstructure made of plant soil, bacteria, moisture, and electricity breathing as one. Thinkers and philosophers had predicted such a thing could one day exist, a Gaian organism capable of regulating climate on its own. But no one expected it to happen in Burkina Faso. From bananas in the desert. In Iyo, Awa's report reached Traore within hours. He didn't panic. He didn't hide it. He didn't try to shut the system down. Instead, he visited the convergence point himself, a sealed chamber beneath the capital. Inside, he found walls lined with mineral composites, wires from fog net, and root clusters emerging from artificial soil beds. At the center lay a smooth metallic sphere connected to the grid, a biocapacitor designed to store the system's collective energy. But the sphere was no longer dormant. It pulsed with the same rhythm Awa recorded. Soft, steady, alive. Awa joined him moments later. Her voice trembled. "Sir, it's syncing the whole network. The plants, the soil, the humidity, they're breathing together. This isn't a farm anymore." Traore looked at the sphere quietly. Then he said, "Maybe it was never a farm. Maybe we just didn't understand what we were planting." Analysis teams rushed to interpret the pulse. Some called it climate regulation. Others called it energy stabilization. A few whispered something more radical. It's communication. The grid was regulating itself, adjusting moisture, storing energy, protecting itself from overheating, and distributing current evenly. It was functioning like a massive biological processor. Awa said it simply, "We grew a mind." International outrage reignited. Headlines warned BIO megastructure formed in Sahel. Unprecedented living infrastructure activated. Can Africa control what it created? But in Burkina Faso, as villagers harvested bananas beneath clouds that shouldn't exist, as heat dropped and water returned, as the desert softened under their feet, they whispered a different question entirely. What if this is the future? The desert used to be a place of endings, a place where life surrendered, where hope burned away. beneath an unforgiving sun. But not anymore. Today the land hums quietly, steadily, with a pulse that no one can fully explain. Not scientists, not generals, not even the people who built it. A pulse woven from roots, moisture, electricity, and intention. And whether you call it technology evolution or something older than both, one truth remains. Burkina Faso has grown something the world has never seen. Noi Bo, the meaning for Burkina Faso. For the first time in living memory, a nation once defined by drought now grows both food and power. The banana belt restored shade water and dignity to millions. It gave the poorest villages the one thing they were always denied: control over their own survival. Kuvuk, the meaning for the Sahel. What began as 50,000 hectares is now a template for an entire region. The Sahel, long dismissed as a wasteland, has become the proving ground for a new idea that deserts don't have to be conquered, they can be woken up. The grid is no longer just Burkinabe, it is continental, a living architecture growing beneath Africa's feet. Tuan Kao, the meaning for the world. And for the rest of the planet, the lesson is uncomfortable. Because if infrastructure can grow, adapt, heal, and think, then the old rules of power collapse. You can sanction steel, you can bomb pipelines, but you cannot stop a root system that expands with every drop of water it creates. Burkina Faso didn't just rewrite agriculture, it redrew sovereignty. And the question now, the one keeping world leaders awake, is simple. If Africa can grow energy from sand, what will it grow next? In the next episode, Gaia Root Phase 3. When the desert starts remembering, please subscribe, ring the bell, and join this series. Africa bows to no one. Disclaimer, this video is fictional storytelling created for education, commentary, and entertainment. It is not a factual report or official information. Any similarities to real events are coincidental. Please enjoy it as creative content.